Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Village Board meeting of November 9th. Please join us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Mrs. Thomas.
Trustee Purcell. Here. Trustee Washington. Trustee Harris Jones.
Here.
Trustee Heiferman.
Here.
Trustee Roman.
Here.
President Hofer.
Here. Representing staff this evening to the audience's right is our Public Works Director, John Schaefer, Police Chief Denise McGrath, Finance Director Dennis Bubenek, Economic Development and Community Development Director Angela Maceras, Village Attorney Chris Cummings, and Village Manager Jim Marino. The minutes of October 26th. Any additions or corrections? Trustee Purcell.
Nothing here.
Trustee Harris Jones.
Nothing for me.
Trustee Heiferman. Trustee Roman.
Nothing.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
So moved. Second.
Been moved by Trustee Roman, seconded by Trustee Harris Jones. Roll call, please.
Trustee Purcell.
Aye.
Trustee Washington. Pardon me. Trustee Harris Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Heiferman.
Aye.
Trustee Roman.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. The claims list in the amount of $2,285,264.28. Comments or questions? Trustee Purcell.
All good.
Trustee Harris Jones.
All good for me.
Trustee Heiferman. Trustee Roman.
Nothing.
May I have a motion to approve the claims list, please?
So moved.
Been moved by Trustee Purcell, seconded by Trustee Heiferman. Roll call, please.
Trustee Purcell.
Aye.
Trustee Harris Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Heiferman. Aye. Trustee Roman.
Aye.
Claims list is approved. Of that 2 million plus claims list, 4 items comprise the bulk of that. Our payment to our engineering firm, Burns McDonald, for our new water supply was $721,000. Our payment to the City of Harvey Water for 1 month's water, $342,000. 1 month's health insurance for village employees, $246,000, and partial bond repayment for our small bond issues that we issue every 2 years. That was $632,000 or $1,941,000, 85% of that claims list. Hear from the audience. If anyone would like to address the board on any subject not on the agenda, please raise your hand. If not, at this time, I'd like to make an appointment of village trustee. Since Barbara Dawkins' resignation from the village board, I have discussed its position with 3 potential candidates and interviewed 3 additional candidates. Barbara joined me in these interviews as it was her desire to have a candidate that she felt brought forward the values and goals that we all share. Both Barbara and I agree that CC Ballou would be the best choice for the village board. CC is a member of the Homewood Beautification Committee and a former Homewood Library Board member. I am recommending that she be appointed to the vacant trustee position. This position ends as of April 30th, 2023. May I have a motion appointing her to this position?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Trustee Purcell, seconded by Trustee Roman. Roll call, please.
Trustee Purcell.
Aye.
Trustee Harris Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Heiferman. Aye. Trustee Roman.
Aye.
The motion is approved. CC, you're here with your family. Please come in and be sworn in. Well, they can come up with you if they'd like. Come on, it's all right. It's all right. Come on, everybody, come on up. It's a nice moment.
I state your name. I, Vicky Ballou, having been appointed to the office of village trustee for the village of Homewood, the office of village trustee for the village of Homewood, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. Constitution of the State of Illinois. Constitution of the State of Illinois. And the municipal ordinances for the village of Homewood. And the municipal ordinances for the village of Homewood. And that I will faithfully discharge. And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of trustee. The duties of the office of trustee to the best of my ability. To the best of my ability.
be seated. Did you want to make a speech? I'm not kidding. At this time, may I have a motion to approve the appointment of Barbara Dawkins to the Economic Development Committee?
So moved. Second.
Been moved by trustee Purcell, seconded by trustee Roman. Roll call, please.
Trustee Purcell.
Aye.
Trustee Baloo.
Aye.
Trustee Harris Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Hyperman. Trustee Roman.
Aye.
The motion is approved. Ms. Dawkins, if you'd please come up to be sworn in.
I state your name. I, Barbara Dawkins, having been appointed to the position of Economic Development Committee, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
That I will support the Constitution of the United
the
States,
Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the municipal ordinances for the Village of Homewood,
and the municipal ordinances of the Village of Homewood,
and that I will faithfully discharge,
and I will faithfully
to
discharge,
the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
the
duties of
the office, the duties of the Office of Economic Development Committee.
the duties of the Office of Economic Development.
Welcome aboard. You have to stay for the whole meeting. You know. At this time, may I have a motion to reappoint members of the Tree Committee, Debbie Baldoff, Carolyn Burry, and Carl Persons for a 3-year term. May I have such a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Been moved by trustee Roman, seconded by trustee Harris Jones. Roll call, please.
Trustee Purcell.
Aye.
Trustee Baloo.
Aye.
Trustee Harris Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Hyperman.
Aye.
Trustee Roman.
Aye.
The motion is approved. The omnibus vote, Mrs. Thomas.
The board is asked to approve an intergovernmental agreement between the village and Cook County Department of Public Health for its environmental health inspectional services at food establishments in the village. The services will be offered December 1, 2021 through November 30, 2022. This is a contract renewal. The board is asked to approve a budget amendment in the amount of $4,500 and authorize President Hofeld to enter into an agreement with Block Group, Inc. for the purchase of 6 stationary license plate readers in the amount of $61,500. The license plate readers will be installed at strategic locations as an investigative tool and a means for crime deterrence. The police department has been using the technology since 2018 at the intersection of 175th and Halsted. With this purchase, the police department will expand the use of license plate readers to 5 additional intersections. The board is asked to approve ordinance M 2199 for the sale of real estate from 18225 to 18255 Dixie Highway, the former site of Bogart's Char House, to Dixie Highway LLC, contingent upon the parties negotiating a redevelopment agreement for the property. The board is asked to approve the September 22, 2020 minutes for a public hearing on the Dixie Miller Court TIF district.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from anyone in the audience with regard to these matters? Board comments? Trustee Purcell?
No.
Trustee Baloo?
No.
Trustee Harris Jones?
Nothing for me.
Trustee Hyperman?
I have no comments on that.
Trustee Roman?
Nothing.
May I have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda, please?
So moved. Second.
Been moved by trustee Purcell, seconded by trustee Roman. Roll call, please.
Trustee Purcell. Aye. Trustee Baloo.
Aye.
Trustee Harris Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Hyperman.
Aye.
Trustee Roman.
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. New business, discussion of the 2021 real estate tax levy. Mr. Bubenek.
Puzzle looks often seem to be part of the yearly discussion to set a non-home real estate tax levy. We can attribute that to 3 things. It's not really a process to set the levy, it's a process to allocate the levy. And by that, I mean, as a non-home rule community, we know what the grand total is gonna be each year. So we know our ending point, and then we allocate that amongst the tax cap lines of pensions and day-to-day operations. So up on the screen, the total levy is very predictable in its fashion and how it grows. But you can see that we have to make decisions of how much to allocate towards pensions versus how much to allocate towards day-to-day. You can't allocate more to one without taking it from the other. The formula we have to use as a non-home rule community is one size fits all. It's the known CPI for the past year of 1.4%, plus an estimated amount for new construction equalized assessed value. We'll estimate that at 3.3. So our total that we're allowed to raise our property tax levy is 4.7% under tax cap rules. The debt requirements are not subject to tax cap. So in the long run, even though we can increase our levy by 4.7%, we're a low debt community. So our total tonight is actually going to be up 3.8%. So there's a lot of confusion there. If it's going down, why not reallocate more towards pension? So we just can't do that with debt. But with debt, that has to go down when it goes down, and it goes up when it goes up. To the memo. The purpose, it's necessary to discuss with the village board each year as a non-home rule community, real estate tax levy, set under tax cap rules, bring the ordinances back for a vote in December. Tax levy is the amount of money a taxing body can request for the overall property taxes that are paid for residents in the district. We know what that total is as a non-home rule community. Setting the levy is dictated by the state of Illinois tax cap laws. We just covered that it's the change in the consumer price index or CPI plus an estimate for new construction EAD. Again, that's 4.7%. We do have to, again, with the line there, you can see that we've allocated more towards pensions over the past 11 years, and that's come as we allocate less towards day-to-day. We do give an option from the state at 100% level funding or 90% level funding. Again, we picked the 90% level funding this year because, again, if we go to the 100%, we have to take more away from the blue line. The green line's not going to change, but we already have a pretty big split there with more local actions the day-to-day. Of course, pension fund would always like to have more money, but we are in compliance with the state by picking a 90% funding level. Debt obligations are going down this year. Again, we're a low debt community. That decrease cannot be reallocated towards that blue or that red line. The Village of Homewood's levy is only about 10% of the total real estate tax bill. For example, if you have a real estate tax bill of $6,000, $600 of that $6,000 will go towards village operations. Those operations are dominated by the services of public safety and public works. Outcome tonight's real estate tax levy of $6,881,974 overall is a 3.8% increase for all the reasons that have been referenced earlier. Recommended board action, discuss the levy tonight and direct staff to bring the appropriate real estate tax levy ordinances to the board's December 14th meeting for a vote.
Thank you. Comments or questions from anyone in the audience? Board comments. Trustee Purcell.
As always, thank you for all the work that you guys put into this. There's really not a whole lot that we could do about it other than accept the fact that this is where we're at, but you guys have done a great job, and thank you.
Trustee Ballou.
Thank you.
Trustee Harris
Great
Jones.
job, great job. Thank you.
Trustee Heffernan. Trustee Rowe.
Thank you very much.
Once again, Dennis, we can see how pensions just eat up the levy. And that's not under our control. That's what the state of Illinois has done.
And we could probably all draw the green line out the next 10 years. It's just what's going to happen with the red line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Ordinance M 2200, special use permit and parking variance for 2413 to 2415, 183rd Street. Ms. Maceras.
Good evening. Under consideration is an application by Jerome Anderson to operate a hair salon. Anderson is a contract purchaser of a two-story, multi-use commercial and residential building. It's located at 2413 to 2415 West 183rd Street in the B2 Community Business District. Ms. Anderson proposes to operate a salon in the approximately 3,000 square feet space within this multi-tenant commercial center. Ms. Anderson will also be the tenant of the apartment upstairs of the salon. Salons are a special use in the B2 district, and the proposed salon requires 10 parking spaces. The subject property has 5 on-site parking spaces in front of the property and 2 garage spaces which are dedicated to the second floor apartment. The salon is deficient by 5 parking spaces and requires a parking variation. Ms. Anderson has secured a lease from Best Cleaners, which is located on the west side of the center at 2429 West 183rd to use 5 spaces. In addition, she has permission from Walt's Food Center for overflow parking, and there are 4 municipally owned parking spaces that front 183rd Street for which overflow parking can be utilized. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on October 14th, continued the hearing to October 28th to consider this application. With 5 members present, they unanimously recommended approval of both the special use permit and the parking variation. Ms. Anderson, the applicant, as well as the current building owners, Jeff and Rita Sachs, are in attendance at tonight's meeting, and they can present their application and answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson,
Yeah.
is there anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, actually, I know she spoke a lot about, what's happening other than, already have a business, I already operate a small salon in Homewood already. I'm just really trying to navigate how to live work environment. So I'm going from a 2-chair to a 2-chair, and that's really because of more foot traffic that may be able to have a job on hand that may take on any new business. I don't personally need a new business, but like I said, I'm just trying to consolidate my living and my work. And it just makes more financial sense and the practice.
Okay.
But I can't answer any questions that you want to ask about my business.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments or questions from anyone in the audience? Any board questions? Trustee Purcell? Trustee Baloo?
No.
Trustee Harris-Jones? Trustee Heiferman?
As a person who grew up above the store, I think it's a great idea.
Trustee Roman?
No questions.
And again, we are certainly influenced by the rendering of the zone board, Plan Commission zone board, a 5-0 vote in approval of this. With that, may I have a motion to approve special use ordinance M2200, please?
So moved.
Been moved by Trustee Purcell, seconded by Trustee Heiferman. Roll call, please.
Trustee Purcell.
Aye.
Trustee Baloo. Trustee Harris-Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Heiferman.
Aye.
Trustee Roman.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Thank you. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Item C, presentation of the 183rd Street traffic study. Mr. Schaefer.
Good evening, it's been a while since I've been up here. In February of 2021, the engineering firm of Burns & Shaw contracted by the Homewood to perform a traffic study of potential improvements to 183rd Street in the Village of Homewood. The study project limits from the intersection of 183rd Street and Park Avenue on the west to 183rd Street and Halsted Street on the east, distance of 1.83 miles. The project involved collection of traffic data and analysis, which included the following: traffic counts, corridor crash reports for the most recent 5 years, a list of potential improvements, sketches to illustrate some of the more complicated improvement concepts, and recommended concepts for the Village of Homewood to consider. This work is now complete and will be summarized in a presentation by Mr. Stephen Brady, who's in the audience tonight, and Steve Golden, who's also representing the engineering firm in Redmond County.
Really great job, John.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like I was here a year ago or something like that. Thank you, John. Thank you, Dylan, for having us here. That's not work. Technology. So again, we'll go over quick introductions of who Steve and I are, the scope of work, findings today, some of the next steps. We'll get through this really quickly so that we can get to the last section with questions and comments as much as humanly possible. So again, Steve Bowden worked for Burns and McDonald, Mr. Stephen Grady also worked for Burns and McDonald here to represent and go forth with 183rd. So we were hired, again, as Mr. Schiffer discussed, we were hired to do a traffic study on 183rd from Paulstead Park. That scope of work consisted of traffic counts, crash analysis, traffic modeling, and potential solutions.
Thank you.
So findings to date, one of the things that we did back in April of this year was we did a 13-hour, on April 13th, 2021, we did a 13-hour count of some of the major intersections in Homewood on 183rd Street. And one of the things that we'll point out to you is that this is kind of a unusual street where you have a peak in the morning, but as your midday goes on, you actually have another peak and you get to a higher volume. And then towards your evening, you get another peak as well. Usually streets actually have a morning peak. They go down in the afternoon and then they go up again in the evening. So it's a little bit unusual. Again, this was done on April 13th of this year, 13-hour period. It was done every 15 minutes. So we have some good data. There was 7 different intersections that we had cameras set up on to count the study or count the cars. So we have some good data in regards to that. Again, consistent traffic volumes throughout the day. There was no significant morning or evening hour rush surges. Higher volumes west of Dixie Highway. West of Dixie Highway, average day traffic was 17 to 26,000. East of Dixie Highway was 5 to 18,000. So in general, a very busy street. Hand it over to Mr. Grady to actually go through some crash analysis that we talked through and analyzed.
thank you, Steve. So crash analysis. Like John said, we looked at the previous 5 years worth of crash data from 2016 through 2020. There were 438 individual reports that we reviewed as a part of the study. And as a part of that review, we looked at each individual crash. Where did it take place? What were the circumstances of it? What were the mitigating factors perhaps? Was it morning? Was it evening? Was there bad weather? Just what kind of factors might also have contributed to each individual crash? So one of the interesting things we found was that over 40% of the reported crashes occurred between Park Avenue and Dixie Highway. And then the Dixie Highway intersection by far had the most crashes with 76 total. And so this chart here just gives kind of a breakdown of the crashes at each intersection and kind of each section of 183rd that we studied by year. So this one gets into a little bit more detail as to what types of crashes we found. So, you can see that almost half of the crashes were rear ends, 49%. 18% of the crashes involved injuries. 76% of the crashes happened during dry daytime conditions, which that was of particular interest to us, that we really did not see weather or time of day playing a significant factor in the crashes that were taking place. So as a part of the study, he took each individual intersection and prepared crash exhibits for each one. This was important for the traffic modeling that we did to try to better understand what was taking place at each intersection. And so this is just an example of, one of the intersections where we put together these exhibits. There's an exhibit for every single intersection that we evaluated as part of the traffic study, but this kind of gives an example of what those look like. So we wanted to focus a little bit on Center Avenue. We certainly recognize that that is one of the intersections that's of particular interest to an awful lot of people for a variety of reasons. Being an offset intersection, one of several along 183rd, as a matter of fact. Offset intersections are and, there's all these issues that go with those, and this one is certainly no exception. So, just looking at Center Avenue alone, we start to look at the total number of crashes just at that intersection, being a total of 39. One of the things that that really stuck out to us as engineers when we were looking at this was the total number of what we call A injuries and B injuries. So A injuries being those that require ambulance transportation to a hospital, as well as B injuries, which are evident, injuries that are evident on the scene when the police arrive that require some sort of medical treatment on scene. So we saw a pretty significant number between A and B, which is unusual for a street like this. Some of the causes that we saw, poor sight distance on opposing left turns. Crossing movements mixed with poor geometry. So people trying to go north and south, but having to make that awkward turn as they try to get across 183rd Street. And then what we would call driver error / misbehavior is basically, people operating their vehicle in a manner that is, unsafe, ignoring stop signs, driving the wrong way on the road, making an illegal U-turn, things of that nature where they just aren't following the rules of the road that are in place. So those were some of the main causes that we saw. So just to talk a little bit about the current configuration. So the delineators installed along the center line that were intended to eliminate the left turns and try to limit that northbound, southbound through movement, accompanied with no left turn signs on each approach. If people had, followed the roadway directions that they were given, should have been successful. However, people have, making decisions in their own best interests have led to, some of the issues that we've seen. So we're seeing, it should have, the results of it should have been fewer angle crashes, turning movement should have been reduced. But instead, like I said, we're seeing illegal U-turns, some of the concerns on the durability and visibility of the delineators long term. I believe some of them have already got to be replaced because they've been, hit by people. So it's just not working as intended. So some of the possible solutions that we've looked at, taking that intersection of Center Avenue and 183rd, making it a four-way stop. The advantages, very safe, it's inexpensive, but the concerns would be how is that going to impact traffic, especially during the afternoon? And, as traffic volumes build, what would the impacts of that be? Another idea is doing a permanent traffic signal, which would reduce or completely eliminate uncontrolled crossing movement on 183rd. But it does get more expensive. Again, traffic flow is more significantly impacted with the permanent traffic signal. We also looked at a potential temporary traffic signal, and so it would be, so let the difference between these two, one would be, they would both be permanent. The permanent one would be a permanent style installation, like what you're used to seeing at most intersections, where you would have mast arms and things like that. The temporary traffic signal is temporary in that it would be more of a temporary style installation, where you would typically see in a construction zone where you've got the wood posts with the traffic signal suspended on a wire going across the road. The idea being that that would be much less expensive, it's easier and quicker to install, but they do come with higher maintenance costs. And at some point you would, the maintenance costs probably get to a point where you would want to do a permanent installation because you wouldn't want to continue that long-term maintenance effort. Another possible design concept would be an extended barrier median. So something that would extend well beyond the limits of the current delineators, where you would hopefully create a barrier long enough to enforce that idea that you cannot, people cannot make that U-turn that they're making now because it's such a short distance. This would be something significantly longer than that, where hopefully people's caution would win out and they would not take those risks. But with physical barriers, you do have the potential for different types of crashes to occur. So that is a concern that does go with that solution. Continuing on, there's the option of realigning Center Avenue so it's no longer an offset intersection. That addresses the primary issue, however, very expensive. Now you're getting into property acquisition, having to acquire more right-of-way to be able to do that. Does that go so far that you have to get into purchasing homes? There are those issues that come with a potentially high price tag. Another option, install a roundabout. A roundabout addresses all primary crash causes, but roundabouts are very expensive. This was one of the locations where we did draft out what it would potentially look like to do a roundabout at Center Avenue. It's a little bit of an unconventional layout, as you would see in the study, but we did that as in an effort to limit the amount of right-of-way that would be required to put a roundabout in there. Roundabouts, you're looking at 1 to 2 years of planning and design just to get the construction. So there's an awful lot that does go into those to make sure that they're being done correctly. Another idea is to convert 183rd Street to a 3-lane section. So having a left turn lane is likely to eliminate most of the crash issues. But again, this would have an effect on peak period traffic, probably both in the morning and in the evening, and that would have to be modeled more closely. Another option we looked at was eliminating left turns to and from one leg of Center Avenue. So that would be making it so that there is just physically, you cannot make that turn no matter what. It's just no longer available. So that again addresses the primary issue. However, it does create significant inconvenience to local traffic, and it does create a new enforcement issue with expensive street reconfiguration. So again, with every advantage, there's that concern that has to be looked at. So the next step. So the federal funding process, so, some of the solutions we've talked about are relatively inexpensive, and the village could potentially fund those themselves. Some of the solutions are going to be significantly more expensive, and there may be a desire to, go and, attempt to get some federal funding to help pay for those, whether it's, CMAP or SDP or ITAP or, there's several others out there that are available as a part of, but to that point, if you're going to, if the village does have a desire to try to go out and acquire funding, then it's important that they follow the NEPA procedures, which is the National Environmental Protection Act. And so the traffic study that was done for 183rd Street, we were very careful to make sure that we followed all NEPA procedures, which it does take more time, but it was very important that we did that, knowing that the village might be going for federal funds. Had we not followed that process, it could have caused an issue going forward with getting that federal funding. But some of the things that would have to be done under the next, the next phase when we move forward, NEPA would require environmental studies be done, looking at not just, environmental issues, looking at historical preservation issues, looking at, potential for contaminated soil. There's a long list of things that we have to look at. The formal traffic and crash study, which has been done, and that's what we're here presenting today. But then all of that would get rolled into a project development report or a PDR, and that is what would have to be submitted for ultimate approval. There would need to be coordination done with IDOT and the Federal Highway Administration Joint Review Committee, because when you go for federal funding, they do have the ultimate authority as a part of that. Design approval would have to be granted by IDOT District 1, which they will not give unless we've gone through all of these processes and checked all these boxes. So it's a very formalized procedure that we have to make sure that we follow. So there's, like I said, there's a variety of different potential funding sources out there. They all have different application requirements. They all have different, open application time. So once we know from the village what potential solutions you want to move forward with, then we can start looking for what are going to be the most applicable funding sources, so that we know who we can start applying to. And so that'll be something that we'll want to do as quickly as possible, so that we can get those out there and start trying to find money for the village where possible. A lot of these, like I talked about, the IDOT involvement, it does make the process a little longer, but in general, with most of these, you'll get 80% of the project paid for, which is a nice thing. But it does, it can be a little taxing and a little frustrating when you do have to go through the IDOT process. They supervise funding agreements, plan reviews at 2 different levels of completion, and then you're required to go through the statewide bidding process. So you wouldn't be bidding the project yourselves, it would be going out on an IDOT bidding bulletin. So you give up a little bit of control in exchange for their assistance on the plan. So this is, the next couple pages here are just a variety of different mitigation strategies for the different locations. And so we went through this based on location. We ranked each location based on, ranking of importance. That was based largely on the number of accidents and the severity of the accidents at that location, as far as, where different locations fell. I won't go through these, there's quite a few, but they are in the traffic study, they are available. But we did look at, possible mitigation strategies for each location. We looked at the feasibility of each location. We worked with our estimating team to put together, kind of a really high level cost right now, just to try to give the village kind of an idea of the order of magnitude that each one might have, understanding that there's a lot of information not known at each of these locations, utilities, things like that, which could play a role. And then we also had a recommendation for whether or not it should go forward for further study, in our opinion. And so there's a long list here. So, and it kind of keeps going. Before we get to questions, there is one thing I wanted to say about that list. One thing that has not been looked at this point in time is we have not analyzed each one of those for what we call a crash mitigation factor. That was not part of the scope of the traffic study. That's something that you would typically do as a part of the next phase of this process. And what that is that's where we actually dive into the traffic model. And we look at each one of those solutions that we're going to carry forward to further look at. And we start looking at, kind of law of unintended consequences. So we have a solution, it'll fix this problem. But we dive into the model to see, okay, what does the model tell us is going to happen if we do that? So we may look at it and say, okay, this intersection has an issue with head-on collision. So we come up with a solution to fix the head-on collision, but all of a sudden we find that solution is going to start causing, a different type of accident. That's something we need to look at for each one of these so that we can give the village, better, the best information possible of, okay, we don't want to do this because even though it would solve the problem we have right now, it's going to create a whole new problem. Let's take this solution off the list. Let's go on, let's look at the next one. And so I just wanted to make that clear that has not been done as of this stage. And so that's our presentation. Thank you.
Okay, lot to digest. Comments or questions from anyone in the audience before board comments? I'm sorry, sir, I'm running the meeting.
No, I was just mentioning to the person behind me here.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay, go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. I live on Park Avenue, and I see quite a number of cars going south on Park Avenue. When they get to 183rd, then they go left-hand turn. And I've had some close calls myself on the west on 183rd, make my left-hand turn to go north on 183rd. And has the idea of surveillance cameras ever been talked about to deter this? Because I would think if that area were monitored, the traffic would be less inclined to make these
That's very good. I think we've all observed that. Mr. Schaefer, weren't you talking about something more permanent there?
In the traffic report, there is that intersection was looked at and possible solutions just because of that issue of people trying to make that left-hand turn. So one of the solutions could be to put in a permanent, where you can only make a right-hand turn. You wouldn't be able to make a left-hand turn based on a concrete median that would have to be put in. One of the things too, I think it's important to get out and the police chief can correct me on this if I'm wrong. People think that if you put cameras up, that you can issue tickets and speeding tickets and everything like that. That's not allowed in the state of Illinois for our type of community. It's only allowed for basically the way the law is written, basically for the city of Chicago. You have to have over 1 million population, and it has to be around schools and everything else. So it wouldn't apply to us. The village would not be able to put cameras up and issue speeding tickets or anything like that. So, and once people learn that, they don't pay attention to the cameras anymore. They do what they do. It's just like, what you seen on 183rd Center when we put up those ballards.
people don't, they know they're not supposed to go through them, so what do? They break the law, and, or they go against traffic, or whatever the case may be. It's just the way people are driving these days that we can't control. We can only try to control to make it as safe as possible. We can't control the driver themselves.
There's a number of trucks that do that too. They come down, I don't know if they can't make it under the viaduct, but they continue going south on Park, and then they make their left-hand turn on 183rd, rather than, turning right to the west and somehow turning around.
Right,
That's another issue.
correct, and that's because a truck can't make it underneath the north viaduct.
Right.
And they're still trying to get that side of Homewood, so that's what they intend to do.
Unless the sign were put out at the entrance to the park saying that no left turn is permitted further down. I don't know if that's a solution, so that they would eventually learn they can't come down there. They would have to go down, also,
I think that's a very good point. I travel that road every morning, and I see the same doggone thing, and I have many times I thought, let's get some signage down by the North Viaduct to say you can't turn left at 183rd Street. So if we could look at that, John, that might help that as well. People will ignore it, but in some cases, the truck drivers and all, they may not. If we can look at that, that's something we could do in-house. I'm sorry, sir, you were? Okay, go right ahead.
Page 156 of this illustrated report. Bullet point, keep speeds low, especially where pedestrians and bikes are using the facility and when there are high volumes of entering and exiting traffic at numerous access points. Make sure the design of the facility reinforces desired speed. Nowhere in this report, except for there, mentions the word speeding. The reason why the fatality at 183rd and Center occurred was speeding. There was another fatality up closer to Dixie Highway, there was fatality. So you see the numbers, but you don't talk about death and fatalities in those accidents. And so we did this marvelous study of just 183rd Street. Speeding kills people. That's what accidents come about. And nowhere in the report does it even suggest assessing average speed throughout the village. Dixie Highway, right in front of the police station, 25 miles an hour. Take a traffic gun, go out there, and get speeds on the semis going down the road. I think you'd be amazed. I brought this up to the president and police chief before, the number of speeding citations, and I never heard an answer. But if you can reduce the speed, you're going to reduce the seriousness of the accidents. Rear end accidents. Somebody couldn't stop in time because they were distracted or speeding. And we talk about driver error. I mean, that's being really polite. Somebody excessive speed is going to result in bad situations. It's in the report, speed is a big factor that we should focus on, and not just 183rd Street. You go down Ridge Road, same story. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Chief, if you could touch a little bit on enforcement, what's been done on both, on the main streets in town?
Sure, traffic enforcement is part of every officer's everyday duties. When we look at our calls for service total and our number of traffic stops total, it fluctuates anywhere between a quarter to a third of their activity, depending on call volume. And I'm talking numbers over the last 5 or 6 years. So traffic enforcement is a large part of every officer's job. But keep in mind that when you're in a marked squad, that's a deterrent. When people see that marked squad, they alter their behavior and obey the law. As soon as that marked squad is not visible or present, because they're responding to calls for services or some other reason, people go back to their bad driving behavior. And we have certainly seen an increase coming out of the COVID pandemic as people resumed their normal lives, that there was more occurrences of speeding and other traffic violations. We are aware of it. It is not something that is unique to Homewood. It is something that is being faced across the state and across the entire nation. We are doing as much as we can to prevent it as far as enforcement, increasing traffic stops. We do have some new officers will be coming out of training within the next month and a half. So we'll be able to do some more targeted traffic enforcement and things like that. It is as much of our concern as it is your concern. And I think if we all work together, we can help resolve some of these issues and encourage our neighbors and our friends to be more cognizant of their driving and things like that.
Chief, with regard to his previous comment, John's comment was about speeding. I believe that one of those fatalities, the driver was impaired.
Correct. And it is still in the court system. He was charged and it is still going through the court system.
So it's more than just speed.
Oh, no,
But
Yeah.
yeah,
it
yes.
is a huge,
Speeding is a huge factor in a lot of fatal accidents. When we look at charges for speeding, speed in and of itself does not allow a reckless homicide charge, which is what you see when there's an impairment. Speeding itself is not considered for that charge. So if someone is just speeding and there isn't an impairment and there is a fatality, it's a much less severe charge. But that's based on Illinois law. So it's frustrating to us as it is to you.
oh, no, I understand,
Yes.
but just between Regal and Aberdeen, by the school, I mean, you're doing 35 miles an hour and 30, and you're standing still. And that's residential. You got people backing up. I mean, I'm sorry for digressing.
That's all right, John. Yeah, Amy?
So, we talked about signs. So my corner, 183rd Center, so I see it all along the U-turns. And I know, some people, not long ago, my husband and I were out doing yard work, and somebody did a U-turn, and just reaction, I'm like, no, you can't do that. Well, I ended up coming back around and pulling in my driveway, and he's like, why are you yelling at me? I said, because you just did a U-turn, you're not, but there's no sign that says I can't do a U-turn, so stop yelling at me. And I said, well, last year there was a kid that was killed right across the street, and I went into that story with him, and he's like, I had no idea. So some of these people that are pulling these U-turns, maybe they really don't know. They think it's okay.
Good point, good point.
Whether, and the ones that know it's wrong, whether there's a sign up or not, they're not gonna, they'll still do it. But is it possible to get a sign up?
Nevertheless, it's a good point. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Talking about 183rd Street is it's a straight shot down. And there's not that much, there's not that many stop signs or lights and that. So people tend to right-foot it because you can just keep on going. And that, I think, adds to some of the, not only the speed increase, but the problems that are created. It's so easy to do more than the speed limit.
Yeah, that's everywhere today, unfortunately. You go on the Dan Ryan or you go on the tollway and you're doing the limit and you're standing still. People pass you as though you're standing still.
Yeah.
It's endemic. And I don't have the answers. I honestly don't. Anyone else have any comment? Yes.
At what point does the village decide to make a decision for their presentation tonight?
What we're going to do is I'm going to ask the board to have our staff look at the recommendations, look at the cost aspects also, and the funding involved. So we'll be getting future meetings for
It
that.
was very informative, but I didn't see anything much different from the last meeting.
It's more scientific.
We have a few choices now.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's gotten no better, President. It really hasn't. It's, we see it every day. And what the chief was saying, she's absolutely correct. If there's a squad car around, you're not gonna see this all day long. Of course, you can't have a squad car sitting there, but it's getting worse. It blows my mind what I'm seeing every day. And the bad one is, again, like I brought up last meeting, is the people driving down the wrong side. I don't even know what they're thinking. It makes no sense. I just don't get it.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the projected start of making these changes? I noticed that the report I read said 2050 to have it done. So when would it be projected to start?
No, the reference to 2050 in the report, I believe, that's a traffic projection. So anytime you do a traffic study, you're taking a look at what the 2050 traffic projections are for the area, based on, that's given by a group called CMAP. And so that was that reference. It was not that, there was not a timeline in there that things were going to be done by 2050.
Yeah, the whole scene of that.
So we can see them.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But when would some of this get started?
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to ask staff to look at these alternatives, come back to us with what the most recommendations would be and what the cost feasibility is. And then we have to look at the funding also. If we're talking a traffic light, as Steve had said, there may be federal monies involved, but it's a long process going through IDOT, Illinois Department of Transportation. So these are the things that we're going to ask staff to do and get back to us. Any other comments, questions? Trustee Purcell.
Just a couple of things. First, there's a lot of very good information in here. Thank you for putting all this together. I agree with everybody about the whole speeding thing. I didn't see that in here, but I understand that that is a major thing that you guys and we can't control without, being more police, but that's not in our hands and all this other stuff. So, but anyhow, and one of the questions about the funding part of it is with the IDOT thing, are we able to, is it possible to make a decision on something and still apply for the funding and then have them, like retro, kind of like the way the TIF works, where
What are
it's like
the
you have it
steps?
done and then they they pay for
Retro
it.
pay you.
Yeah,
for what you've
exactly.
already invested.
Or that's not.
No, they do not do that that way. So the way the processes work is that, so when you submit your application, you have to be very detailed about what it is you're going to do.
Mhm.
And they will not give you final approval to move forward until you have checked off all their boxes. And, one of those is going to be that you have to have a complete and finished set of plans and specifications that has been approved by IDOT District 1 engineers. And so, yeah, I mean, it is a very regimented process.
I don't understand why they make safety so hard. I mean, it should be on the forefront of like everybody's thing. I know that the safety of not just our residents, but people who travel through here is at the forefront of everybody's, thought process. That's a horrible corner. And I'm sure 90% of it is just because of that, that dog leg, besides the speeding, because the speeding just adds to it. The Park Avenue thing is a bad one too, because I see it as well. I know that a lot of people ignore signage. If they're gonna break the law, they're just gonna break the law, they're just gonna ignore it. But I do think that the no U-turn thing is a really good idea, and that middle, partition, if that could be posted somewhere, and I don't know. But I think that there's a lot of good ideas in here, and if we could just add figuring out a way to reduce the speeding to it, which I know that some of these things could contribute to that, like if there were other stop signs or traffic lights or anything like that. I know that that would contribute to it too. And I know that we're not alone with this. Everybody is facing this, especially coming out of COVID, like you said, because there were a lot of like non-traffic stops that were during COVID. And I think that people kind of got comfortable and people kind of think that maybe that's still happening, but I think we're on the right track. So
So there, yes, there are a lot, several of the solutions in there are designed to address speed by creating a level of discomfort for the person driving. For instance, when you narrow a lane, that, subconsciously, it makes people uncomfortable because they no longer feel like they have as much space. So the tighter you make it on them, the slower they're gonna tend to drive because they're more uncomfortable. IDOT loves 12 to 14 foot lanes. They want us to put 12 to 14 foot lanes everywhere because they're nice, they're big, people have plenty of room to work in, but that makes you feel really comfortable because you have a lot of space. And so you do drive fast. And so it's a really interesting phenomenon. But yeah, so some of these solutions are designed to try to bring in that level of discomfort that will cause people to slow down.
Trustee Baloo, your first meeting, what are your solutions?
Thank you for putting this together. As I'm sure you can see, we have children here, and so
They
safety
were
is.
amazingly well behaved. They were fantastic.
For once. And so safety is always a concern, I think, of any parent, so it's just nice to see what some of the options could be.
Trustee Harris Jones.
Between 183rd up to Halsted, is there a possibility of putting more stop signs to kind of break that speed?
Along 183rd?
Yes, sir.
Yes, so I think when you look through these, I'll call it the potential solutions matrix, there's a lot of locations where we suggest the possibility of adding a four-way stop, adding a traffic signal, adding a roundabout. All of those are features that would break up that ability to carry that quicker speed.
Yes,
now, one of the things that we'll want to look at with any of those is that unintended consequence. So what does everyone do? So you finally make it up to that four-way stop and you finally get your chance to go, and what do? You mash it and you take off because you're going to try to catch that next light up ahead. And so that is something that, with any of these, we need to look at that to see what is going to be the impact of that person when they take off from either that traffic signal or a four-way stop.
One thing I'd like to comment on that too is, when you create a four-way stop on a four-lane, two lanes each direction, four-lane road, it's a little bit difficult, and you can create worse. A problem that is actually greater than what you had before, because now that stop sign is off to the side. People may not see it who are in that inside lane coming through. They don't see it because it's 12 to 15 feet away. It's not like it's right next to you, a couple of feet away. So that can create a lot of people blowing through a stop sign, not realizing that there was one there. So, in order to do that, you would have to change the lane configuration at that intersection to funnel traffic down to one lane, so they would definitely see where that stop sign is.
Trustee Heiferman.
It seems to me some of the highly feasible suggestions seem to be the ones that make the most sense to me. And of course, the fact that they're feasible means that they're relatively low cost. For the Invest in Cook program, where the applications are due in December, is there any chance of some of the lower cost or highly feasible suggestions actually being on an application next month? As the staff looks at it, I think it would be really important to look at each of them, even tree removal ones, things that will be relatively low impact financially, but kind of high impact in helping the situation. Couple other things. In the study, it mentions that the left turns on southbound Park Avenue are prohibited, though traffic counts found dozens of violations. Is that in one day, dozens of violations?
That was less than a day. It was one 13-hour window.
So how many citations a day are given out at that intersection? I mean, is it, I can't imagine that.
I don't have that number off the top of my head here, but it is a high enforcement area. You know, we sit out there and watch that traffic, and it is a very common occurrence but again, as soon as a marked squad is there and visible.
What about an unmarked squad?
Then people don't, do the traffic violation. But yes, it is, as soon as there is not a marked squad there that's present where someone can see, it is a problem area.
In the 183rd, the Center Avenue death that occurred a couple of years ago, which, you know, allegedly there was intoxication and speeding and everything involved in it. When that was first talked about at our meeting, we brought up the concept of having a remarkably increased patrol on 183rd. Have we actually had remarkably increased, and are we seeing tremendous increase in citations over the last couple of years?
Well, during COVID, there was a decrease in citations because for public safety, there was that limited contact. So in that case, we tried to be visible on 183rd as a deterrent with patrols up and down the streets in that manner. So as we're coming out of the pandemic, yes, we are stepping up traffic enforcement, not just on 183rd, but in all of these areas, because as you hear people see this everywhere, 183rd, Ridge Road. So traffic is one of our top priorities for patrol.
Yeah, I think stepping up enforcement isn't even the right word, excuse me, but I think remarkably increased is what everything that I hear that residents are looking for. There's also something on 183rd Street at Gottschalk. Haven't there been, like, during the course of the 5 years of the review of accidents, weren't there 2 pedestrian deaths at that intersection?
That's why the signage went up.
You mean they don't cross here?
Correct.
Signage. Yeah, and I realize that, but 2 deaths at one intersection, and it isn't even mentioned in this.
But I think we looked at, like, asking them, there's that one house there that's got the fence, and it wasn't feasible to ask them to change it or anything.
No, it was more or less.
No, I'm just saying that is a huge issue of the pedestrian deaths right on 183rd, but it's not part of the study. And that corner, though we did put up signs for pedestrians to walk to Dixie to cross, that fence of death still exists there. That as you go southbound on Gottschalk and pull on to 183rd Street, the design of that fence prevents you from seeing every vehicle that is coming over the hill. And the hill is the major issue. I know, Chris, we've talked about that, and you said you can't have them remove the fence. But that's a glaring thing that could potentially save lives. And again, 2 pedestrian deaths in the last few years at that corner.
I just want to comment on that. I believe those deaths happened prior to the 5 years.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm with.
I know at least one of them was prior to 5 years.
All right.
Either way, it's still a big
ahead.
issue. Well, I'm not done, but I do want to say I am with the suggestions of enforcing on 183rd and on Regal.
Trustee Roman.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this. I think we all agree, everybody that lives in this town knows that we have a problem on these streets, the ones that are discussed and ones that are not discussed. I'm in my car all day, every day, and I see it all day, every day. I would love to, and it's nice to actually have the data in front of us because we obviously need this in numbers and all of that so that we can move forward. Hopefully we can get some solutions. It's great to hear that we have some new police officers coming that are going to also be helping with reinforcement, so thank you very much for that. I love the idea about the U-turn, the no U-turn sign. Maybe that is even something that we can have done sooner rather than later. Although I'm also at the Willow School pickup and drop off, so I can attest to the fact that parents and caregivers in our own town do not always pay attention to the signs, but it would be nice to have it there. And it's visible right there, so, and that makes complete sense that people may not even know it. So, and I look forward to hearing the recommendations from everybody moving forward. So thank you very much.
I think what's been surprising was the high accident counts are really between Regal and Park. I don't think any of us expected that, and most of them were in daylight hours when the weather wasn't a factor. That's amazing. As this gentleman had said, I think there's some immediate steps we could take on Park Avenue. We can get a median put in there for no left turns to prohibit it. I'm sure people will go over it nevertheless, but it'll make it more difficult for them to do it. As Trustee Heiferman and Trustee Roman had said, added enforcement. I think you're on that right now, and the message is loud and clear. Signage on the North Viaduct also, I think that's something we could do right away, saying no left turns at 183rd Street. Wherever you think it's a proper position to place it so it can be seen and the traffic will go under the North Viaduct rather than go on to 183rd Street. I think that's something we can do right away also. The no U-turn signs that were mentioned, I think we can implement those as well on the ends of those barricades. Also, I think you should be exploring the traffic light for 183rd and Center, the feasibility of it, the funding for it. That's a longer term solution, but it's something we should be doing as well. So if you can incorporate all those in your recommendations and implement those that can be done as soon as possible, we'd appreciate it. Any other board comments? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you all for your comments. I appreciate that as well. General board discussion. Trustee Purcell. Trustee Baloo.
No.
Trustee Harris-Jones.
Nothing.
Trustee Heiferman.
Welcome, Trustee Blue.
Yes.
Trustee Roman.
Welcome, Trustee.
We do have free leaf pickup. Mr. Schaefer, if you could just explain to the audience the dates for pickup and what the requirements are.
Yes, once again, the village board has approved free leaf pickup for residents in Homewood. Those pickup dates are November 17th and November 24th. You put your leaves in a brown craft bag, the yard bags, put them out for the garbage pickup. Homewood disposal will come by and take those leaves off and dispose of them at no cost.
Okay, it's a nice program. Yes, sir.
Years ago, it used to be 3 pickups. Then it got reduced to 2.
Right.
I spoke several times to different people about this, about $12,000 for the village to do an additional pickup.
Sure. Thank you, John. Yes, sir.
John, just a quick question. Is there leaf pickup after those dates? I mean, if we even have to put the bags with the stickers on? I mean, because right now, as you look, half the trees are still green, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, the issue is after, starting December 1st, the landfills don't accept that type of waste. Yeah. And that's why it always ends typically at the end of the month. All right.
Yeah. We're at the mercy of Mother Nature again.
Yeah.
With that, may I have a motion to enter into executive session to discuss the purchase or lease of real property?
Second.
It's been moved by Trustee Purcell, second by Trustee Roman. Roll call, please.
Trustee Purcell. Aye. Trustee Baloo. Aye. Trustee Harris-Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Heiferman.
Aye.
Trustee Roman.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. We'll take a short recess. Thank you all.